tremendously busy schedules. So we are, one, let me welcome all of you and thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to be with us today. I will be respectful of your time and try to make sure we have finished this session by 3 o'clock. First, before you, last time I read this statement, I'm not going to read the statement, but we are legally required to make sure that each time we present this statement and that you see the issues that we're covering about comments, about conversations on this topic, about it's not intended to reflect on the current VEP funding, what the subcommittees are responsible for, and those sorts of things. So you have the statement before you, so make sure that we cover that. We can go to the next slide, Dominique. Thank you. As you see, our agenda for today is roll call and attendance next. And Dominique, is there anything we need to do? How's our membership today?
Well, we have 2 people joining by phone, or 3 people now, I believe. So if we could have the people by phone identify themselves so that we can count you for attendance.
Very good.
Yeah, Ted Cornelius is here.
Okay, thanks, Ted.
Thanks, Ted.
Terrence Patterson is on the line as well.
Thank
Terrence,
you.
good hearing from you. Is there anyone else?
Hi, this is Kristen Bland with Methodist Full Honor Healthcare. I work with Cato Johnson.
Kristen's making sure I don't miss any of my notes today. I need constant care, believe me.
I also have that we have Yolanda Timberlake, Angela Whitelaw, Chris Henson, Tyler Bolden. Is there anyone that I have missed? And I just wanted to note that I put in the chat a link. Those were the notes that were taken from our previous meeting, and that link you should be able to edit it to add to it. And you can use that when it's time to start doing a little bit of the prioritizing. So I'll turn it back over to you, Cato.
Thank you. What I want to spend most of our time on today is going through the overall feedback that has been gathered so far. And this is just a summary of the feedback. It's not what's going to necessarily be put into another funding, but it's going to be the areas that the commissioner's team, and others have heard throughout their town hall meetings, through people sending in comments, through what the committees have gathered. And so I'll go through this, and then I'll come back and ask you, tell me, what do you think about this? Are we on the right track? Is there anything else you will add here? So I will go through those. I think it's like 5 or 6 slides. It's the overall feedback received, and it is general. And we will talk about the base, the weights, direct funding, outcomes, and then we'll go back and discuss those. And you can look at your list and see, okay, what we have and what we discussed last week, how does that compare? How does that stack up? So why don't we go to the first one, and then I'll go through it. The first one is the base, and this feedback for the base includes the content currently being discussed in the subcommittees, the resources you believe that are critical to include in a formula. And you'll see where this is the things that are listed here. They have been the most consistently brought up: nurses, either every school or the national recommended ratio; counselors, either at every school or the national recommended ratio; school psychologists at the national recommended ratio; teachers' salaries and benefits; then flexibility for facility funding and or deferred maintenance. And we'll come back and talk about the bullet point about providing feedback for these the ones, or would it be some more. Same thing with the weights. The following are the weights that receive the most positive feedback in terms of what should be weighted. And we had some discussion in our group last week on this. Economically disadvantaged and concentration on poverty. Students with disabilities with tiers based on the cost to provide services. English learners, including tiers based on English proficiency. Rural sparsity, fast growing charter enrollment. And areas that did not receive as much feedback that had previously been discussed. And you see what the gifted, the lecture, small LEA size, Cat through 2 small size class. And we'll come back and get your opinion on this. Are these the right weights? What else would you like to see? So we'll go to the next one. Additional dollars. These are the following are the areas that receive the most positive feedback in terms of what may be considered for additional funding. Financial literacy, middle school CTE, innovative high school models, STEM, P-TECH, extended school year, RITs, high dosage tutoring. And we'll talk about these when we come back. That is the things you want to add here. Are these the right ones so far? Because this will go on a lot of reiterations in the coming weeks, believe me. And we've all heard from individuals who would like for us to put other things up. So let's go to the next one. Outcomes. The following are the areas that receive the most positive feedback in terms of what may be considered for outcomes. Early post-secondary opportunities completion, and you see the other things that go under there. Earning dual credits or dual enrollment credits for all students or only economically disadvantaged. AP course completion and or passing for all students or only for economic disadvantaged students. Earning industry certificates or certification. And this has been coming up more and more in many areas as relates to the workforce issues that we're seeing, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in retail and others. So that's been coming up a great deal. Work-based learning metrics, closing the achievement gaps, reading proficiency, differentiated compensation support. And that's another one that's been coming up a great deal. So, okay, we can continue on. Okay, so what we'll do now, as we look at the resource needs and characteristics, let's go back and start at the first one at the base. And Tyler and others, please look at these. What would you say, yes, this is hitting the point, what was missed? Because we'll talk about these for the next 3 or 4 weeks. There will be other conversations concerning what should be in the base. What's missed here, or tell me, how do you feel about this particular list or things you will add?
This is Chris Henson. If I could start.
Yeah, Chris, please.
And I see Angela. I'm sorry, I jumped right in front of you. I apologize. One thing on the teacher salaries and benefits, I just wanted to be clear. It would be important regarding the number of teaching positions as well as an adequate salary for the teaching positions. Maybe that's included in teacher salaries and benefits, but I just wanted to be sure that the number of teachers that are generated, of course, they need to be adequate, as well as the salary that's used to fund those teachers. And then there are a few other things that I don't see here that I would think it would need to be included, because I think the base is going to be one of the most important pieces of a new funding formula. How much should each student generate as far as funding goes? I think the commissioner called it the day in the life of a student.
Right.
And don't see anything here, for instance, for principal or assistant principals. Don't see a librarian. There's several other types of positions that would need to be included, potentially social workers, that I don't see on this list, and just want to be sure that I mention those.
No, Chris, I'm glad you did. That's one of the reasons I wanted to go through this way, to make sure that, and this is not by any means a comprehensive list. It is what people thus far said, but Terrence, Tyler, Angela, I think you were ready to speak to this issue.
Yes, I think before me, Tyler said everything that I wanted to say, but basically I want to just chime in as we're thinking about teacher salaries. I think that's the most critical piece. How do you recruit talent to our area? How do you recruit talent to all of our districts? And I think that is a looming one that, to me, that is almost a quick fix. But then also looking at principals, APs, librarians and counselors, social workers, because I think as we look at the social emotional learning, that's going to be another place that we really have to think about along with instruction. So I just wanted to put that out on the table.
Thank you, Angela. Appreciate that. Tyler, Terrence?
Yeah, hey, Cato, this is Terrence. Hey, I think the list makes sense, and I actually really appreciate Dr. Whitelaw's comment as well. I think my thinking is getting maybe to the next step, which is when we do make our final presentation, I just want to make sure that we frame all of these aspects in the context of why they are important for an urban district.
Great point.
Other subcommittees may come up with a similar list or have similar feedback, but I think it's just really important that our subcommittee emphasizes why these aspects are important for an urban district with its own unique set of challenges.
That's an excellent point. Okay. What else, gang, as it relates to the base?
This is David Jordan with Agape. I appreciate, and I know you said this is not necessarily an inclusive list. This is kind of the typical list being talked about.
Right.
Agree with Dr. Whitelaw in terms of teachers include their pay and that just being a core piece. And so I want to highlight that. And then the other support staff noted here. So our experience in working alongside schools, the data shows that 62% of the factors impacting academics for youth, especially in under-resourced communities, 62% of the factors are within the neighborhood, the community, and the dynamics outside of the school walls. My experience is with the counselors and as Terrence said, social workers not necessarily mentioned, even with that, the ratio, even when you bring the ratio down, it is still significantly high to have deep impact. I mean, so for example, we have a 1 to 25 ratio in schools around attendance and social emotional and parent engagement. And so I think consideration needs to be given not only for what's happening within the school walls, but what's happening outside the school walls, in the neighborhoods, in the community, especially in under-resourced communities, if we're really wanting to see impact.
David, that's a good point. And, we raise that issue in particular in healthcare all the time about the social determinants of health, that, yeah, we can take care of someone when they're here, but if they go back to food deserts, if they can't get their medication, if they can't get to the other things they need, they can't do follow-up visits because they don't have transportation. So exactly, you're talking the same thing we run into here. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you. What else before we move to the next area? And as you think of things, and you'll think of things or you'll hear things from others, even after this meeting, just send those to me, send them to Dominique. We'll put those in. They would continue to be a part of our discussion. So we don't have to complete everything today. We will be discussing this for a while, and we'll hear from other committees. So, Dominique, why don't we go to the next one?
Cato, can I?
Yeah, please.
This is Cardell.
Yeah,
I would just add, I'm never really sure like how comprehensive we're supposed to be in this, but I would guess that a clear starting point for this would be the 30 or 40 or so factors already considered in the current BEP. That would be, because this doesn't consider instructional materials, curriculum, all these other pieces. The thing that I would call out too that I don't think is as included in that consideration, like those different components, is technology. So especially
Okay.
coming through this pandemic, as we think about, one-to-one that Shelby County Schools and other districts have moved to, that technology has always been underfunded or under-resourced in the formula. And I think it's something that we should specifically call out.
That is a great point. Thank you. Appreciate that. Other concerns, other issues, other things we need to bring out.
The only small thing I would point out could potentially be teachers, kind of tagging on to teachers' salaries and benefits would be teachers attracting those who have specialized skills too, or training or specialized degrees working with certain, subsets of students. So, that's kind of going along with what Cordell said. A little, kind of a little more focus there. I'm not sure how comprehensive we need to be at this point.
Okay. Tom, that's a good point. And one of the things that we talked about in a meeting with the commissioner on Monday, and that was, as we look at what other states have done with their student-based formula, what are the things that they made sure they put in? What are the things that they made sure that when they finished at the end of the day? So we'll have access to that, and as we move along, we'll make sure we get that to you, that you see whether it's Indiana, whether it's Texas, what others have done. So good. Okay, why don't we move to weights then? As you can see, the following areas that received the most positive feedback in terms of what should be weighted, and you can see the categories. Are there any categories not listed here that you think should be listed? Are there any other areas you would like to circle that says, for instance, what Terrence brought up earlier about making sure that those things that are really relevant and very important in an urban environment, let's make sure we overlay that on what we're seeing here. So what's up here that you agree with? What's up here that need to still be, that we need to list as we weigh these positive feedback terms?
Cato, this is Ted Cornelius, and I apologize, I can't see because I'm driving, but I had two points, and I don't know where this fits. So, but one thing I was just going to add is, I know I may have brought this up before, but us looking at the whole child support and to where, someone had mentioned outside the walls of the school, but some of the services that nonprofits provide, whether it's before school, after school care, and then also nutrition and food for kids, all that plays a role in their academics. So that was one thing I wanted to just bring up as a consideration also, that may not have been in the original funding formula. Then the second thing is that as we talk about urban, I think I had mentioned this last time, but I only use the example of, and this is the case in multiple, but if I use a case in Nashville, there are subcultures within Nashville that where the vulnerabilities are greater. And so I guess just as we continue to keep talking about what makes the most sense in the way of distributing the funds and things like that, just recognizing those sub-communities that even though it's a part of Nashville, Davidson County, still might represent a really high risk or vulnerable area that we need to still have on the radar as we're considering for the entire county.
No, that's a good point. Because if you think about when we look at economically disadvantaged and concentration on poverty, I think as a group you brought this up last week, and that is even within urban areas, you have some areas that are much worse off and some areas that need more help or need more funding. So yeah, we can make sure we look at that. What else up here? And what else that's not up here that need to be added?
I would say youth involved in the child welfare system or juvenile justice systems. and homeless youth. I know concentration of poverty is here, but those would be kind of three groups too that I would.
Okay.
I would add, this is Cardell, to just, sorry for jumping in, to be a little bit more targeted, and as unlikely as I think it is probably to make it to the end, but that is, numbers and research based on statistics, is race. And I think that's what we're talking around a little bit, but that is clearly like a consideration and a challenge in terms of where the learning gaps or achievement gaps are.
No, do not disagree with you at all.
Yeah, race and ethnicity for sure.
Race and ethnicity. Okay,
Agree.
got those down. What
See,
else?
I think mobility. Can we think about mobility
Mm,
in large school districts? Students moving from place to place.
yes. Yeah.
This is Chris Henson. I was going to mention mobility as well. That's a big issue, particularly for us here in Metro Nashville. The latest data that I saw shows approximately 39% of our students move from one school to another within a school year. Very disruptive. Obviously, there are other factors involved with that moving that need to be considered. And then secondly, on that first bullet with economically disadvantaged, with the way that the current formula captures that data, it uses families who qualify for direct certification for benefits. And I think we know that there's a large number or segment of our student population or families, particularly our undocumented students and undocumented families, that don't qualify for those benefits, and therefore they aren't captured in that economically disadvantaged component as it currently exists within the funding formula. And so there needs to be a way to capture all of the economically disadvantaged students for that particular weight.
Okay. Chris, thank you. And, as we tell you at the beginning of these meetings, we're recording all of your comments. So everything you saying, we would be put in there. And it's strange, somebody mentioned mobility. It is absolutely amazing how education and healthcare follow some of the same streams. One of the biggest issues we see when we get dinged for readmissions within 30 days is the mobility issue. I couldn't get back from my appointment. I couldn't get food. I couldn't go pick up my medicine. It's mobility. And when someone is being treated in your facility, that never comes up. But when you talk about great poverty, mobility is a major issue. What else do we need to add, put in, anything else up here that you see that you would like to have some other criteria attached to it?
Cato, I might suggest, I'm not seeing matters around mental health. We often use adverse childhood experiences, exposures,
right,
trauma, and so that might be a consideration as one of the variables for weighting, and maybe having certain tiering based on data of what that would mean on the 10 scale, four checks of trauma relative to ACEs, for example, so something like that that's data driven.
Okay. David, I'm glad we put that on our list last week also. So having that, no, that was good that you brought that up. And that's the reason Dominique mentioned earlier that we have our list, and we'll be sending that out to all of you to make sure when we have those discussions. So what else before we move away from this list? I want to make sure that you get a chance to add anything you want or to make comments about anything else up here.
The Surgeon General earlier this week issued an advisory on youth mental health.
Youth mental health.
And I don't know if you all have read that or not, but that's actually a lot of the things we're talking about are mentioned here, some of the barriers that the kids face. And so it could be a guideline to look at.
Yeah.
I was literally just reading it. And a lot of the things we're talking about, we're tracking right along with it. So.
No, Tyler, it's strange because we have the Children's Hospital that really hit when that came out. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, Dominic, we can move to the next one as we're recording. Additional dollars. The following are the areas that receive the most positive feedback in terms of what may be considered for, quote, additional funding. Do you agree with these areas, other areas you would like to mention, or the caveats you would like to put around financial literacy, middle school, other things you would like to see up here?
Cato, I thought when I looked at this list, and I just want to jump in on here, but I saw RTI, are we talking about A and B, academic and behavior? Because I think that we focus so much on RTI, academics, RTI 2, with response and intervention, that I want to make sure we focus on both areas,
Okay.
the academics as well as the behavior.
Okay. Let's make sure we put that in. Great point.
Yeah, I don't know if this works here, but some sort of measure of the DEI practices of the school, kind of how they're evaluating their hiring practices and looking at the diversity within the school itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
One that I didn't see. I'm sorry. One that I didn't see on the base that maybe it could be considered here would be there. Haven't seen anything regarding professional development and training for teachers.
Oh.
And that's something that's lacking in the current funding formula. There's not component for that, and I think that's important.
Okay. We can certainly add it to additional dollars. Anything else? Cordell, David, Terrence?
I would probably underscore something that's been said, but I'm not seeing it here. So 2 is just a general, I don't want to assume what may or may not be assumed, that first of all, there need to be more dollars. We're just underfunding currently, even at a national rate. I think Tennessee pays $10,000 per student on average. Mm-hmm. National average, I've been told, is $15,000. So the pie's got to be larger, period. Right. Within that, the whole child, the whole family, all the supports and the interventions that directly and indirect impact academics, economic mobility for older students, et cetera, I think is just, we find to be a critical aspect.
Okay.
And I don't know, I mentioned it in the base, but I'll mention it again here because I'm not sure where it goes, but would be technology. Right. In addition, we call out, it's not in this list, but it's down in the paragraph around summer programming and the connection there. Also might be thinking about apprenticeships and internships as well.
Cordell, you would get rave reviews from anybody in the industry sector right now on that. What you just stated. Our people even talking about healthcare academies right now because of the workforce issues.
One thing, I was going to say one thing. Oh, I'm sorry. One thing that I had mentioned before, just want to make sure I keep it out there in front of us, would be some kind of adjustment for the higher cost of doing business in an urban district. We previously had something that was called the cost differential factor formula that has been phased out, basically eliminated. But there are some very real differences in the cost of doing business, cost of living, cost of housing in urban areas compared to rural areas, for instance. And so I really believe strongly that that's something that needs to be taken into consideration if we're going to take into consideration fiscal capacity, which is your ability to pay, your ability to fund education from your own local sources. There has to be something in any funding formula that takes into consideration the higher cost of doing business in an urban setting.
Okay.
Something I've been thinking about here recently is that, I look around this room and there are a lot of nonprofits in the room, and we've been chosen, I think, to sit in this seat because we've had long-standing research-driven, outcome-based programs that address these barriers that we're going to be identifying. And so, to me, it's important, and I think somebody said it earlier, is to ensure that our schools are formalizing partnerships with nonprofits in the area that help address these issues outside of the walls of the school too. So if there's a way to incentivize that here, this could be the place to do it.
Okay, we can put that in. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in thinking about community schools, and that might be like a kind of connection there.
Okay.
Hey, this is Ryan from the phone. I apologize, I'm traveling today, but I
Not a
just
problem.
wanted to double down on that. With there being as much out of school time as there is in school time, I think it takes all of us to lift these ships, and I think that's a huge part of the funding component that I think needs to be stated, particularly in urban districts.
What else is it? What else do you see in this area in particular? Or other things you think about, or other things that people brought up to you that various constituent groups have mentioned? Well, if you think of other things, you can send it to me, you can send it to Dominique, and we'll make sure that we bake that into the discussions that's going on. It's okay.
And you'll have access to this document, so you can just add it there as well.
Exactly.
This
That's
meeting.
right.
I will send the link in the follow-up email as well.
Right. You have everything we're talking about today, you will have that. Okay. The following are the areas that receive the most positive feedback in terms of what may be considered for outcomes. What are the outcomes that would like these? So if you look at this list, what would you add? What would you put more emphasis on? What is it that's clearly not up here at all? Just, your feedback.
I don't know if there's an opportunity to include kind of a self-reported survey from students themselves to measure things. Some of the things that we've discussed that, aren't included here. For instance, kind of mental health measures, and David, ACEs and those things that I don't know that they're going to be represented with these sorts of measures.
Okay.
I think the connection that I think, I don't know how much we're doing it here in this state, but to actual so not just EPSOs and APs and certificate, but actually going to college and college completion rates. So following it through the whole K-14 or K-16 to see how many students and from what schools or districts are actually retained in college or persisting. So persistence. And it might be harder to measure, but also, it'd be great to know as outcomes after school, how are they doing in jobs, careers, and college along the way.
Okay. Good point. Very good point. What else? David, Tyler, Chris, Angela? Anything else you think we need to make sure we have in here? Or once you get the information sent out to you, don't hesitate to add whatever you want to add, because we'll have plenty of discussion on this.
So this is another one that we focus on and the Shelby County Schools has in partnership with us focused on is 9th grade on track, which is a important year in terms of being on track. So on track rates, and that might be at different milestones. I think it's kind of implied here, but not specifically in terms of 3rd grade reading, middle school, and then 9th grade, and then completion.
Okay. We will certainly add that in. Terrence, is there anything you see in the outcomes area that you think we need to add or need to put more emphasis on?
No, I think this is a comprehensive list. The big category is closing the achievement gap, and then the reading proficiency. And I think to Cardell's point, I think there's some things that are sort of implicitly embedded. We don't necessarily need to get into the details. I don't think at this stage, but I think this covers the buckets that we need.
Okay.
This, I'm not sure if this is on target or not, Cato. And it may be, as Terrence was saying, it may be embedded as I read this list. almost the so what. So a youth completes 12th grade, and where do they go? Is it 2-year, 4-year? Is it
Okay. Yeah.
What path are they on, and are they on a path? So for me, I mean, that's something we track with our 2-generation work.
Maybe that's a good point, because, I'm hearing now from the private sector, how do we, all these areas now where we have holes in the workforce, whether it's healthcare, whether it's retail. I mean, we're just seeing them all over the place now. And you're hearing CEOs say, we're willing to fund things we never would. We're willing to set up and attach an academy to a school district to make sure if you're a junior or senior and you want to go, we'll fund that. So you're right. That's one of those that we can really talk about, because you're going to see more of that when you talk to the international papers, the FedExes, the Methodists. I mean, it's all over the place right now. And the pandemic has really accelerated that a great deal. Is there anything else here that we're missing? Dominique, one of the things you may be able to share with, since you have seen a lot of the other subcommittees, you work with those subcommittees, in the discussions we had, is it anything that we have missed that you can think of that other subcommittees have said, even though they're different, but is anything that you think that just jump out at you?
No, I think you all are doing a really good job of coming up with a comprehensive list. I think that you're in a really good place to also start determining whether you think some of these things are the must-haves, the should-haves, those prioritizing pieces that we've talked about before. I think you all had a really good discussion today and come up with a really good list in addition to what you had already done.
It's one of the things I was going to ask the group to give some thought to. Dominique and I will make sure you get all that we talked about today. Start thinking about, in particular, as you look at these, what are the must-haves? What are the things, Cordell, if you're looking at all of these, you say, this is a must. Terrence mentioned in particular, okay, you're an urban district. There's no way you can be all that you need to be as an urban district without having this. This is a must-have. We know those are resources that you have to do because of federal, state law for safety. Then what are the should-haves? Those things that may not be mandatory, but are essential. And we've talked about, you got to look at the whole student. We talked about mental health. So start looking at those. So for our next session, which is first week in January, we'll start zeroing in on the must-haves, the should-haves, and the nice-to-haves. And we'll have other information. We'll have other data points. We'll have other states that you can look at. And also, Dominique, is there anything that the commissioner brought up on Monday when we met that we need to share with this group? We've gone over these areas, but anything else?
She talked some about the resource links that you have in your folder. I sent some things to you last week, but also in the week 3 folder, there's a page of resource links, and she called out really looking at the ECS and the EdBuild are 2 really good places to go where you can start doing some comparisons of states and looking to see what other states have funded. Talk about, stick with some states that are more like us, because I guess it's the Northeast that they're funding at a way higher level than
you mentioned Indiana in particular.
Indiana in particular was one of them. I think maybe Georgia. So that's a really good place for you to start digging in and looking and seeing if there are things that maybe resonate with you that you haven't thought of so far. Also, all the public comment that was taken to this point from all of those public town halls, you have that in, and it's not in the weekly folder, it's in the urban district main folder. You can start digging into that public comment. There's going to be more public comment released in January. I think you'll get about 2 more rounds of public comment, but it's really a really good time for you to dig into that between now and your next January meeting.
Also, let me ask you, is there anything else you feel you need? Anything else you need to see? Any additional information that you feel that we can get to you?
Cato, is it, and I know that we have different that we're comparing ourselves to, but is there anything that's showing that, or research or trends that as other states have changed, that they're seeing their return on investment, they're seeing an increase in student achievement or student growth? Do we have any data around that part as well as we're looking at the BEP?
Yeah, that's a good point. Dominique, what she was saying is, if you take, what is it, to 25 states that have gone to this particular formula, what has been their experience on the dollars they spend? What's their return on their investment? We can check and see what we have and see about getting something to you. That's a great
Cato,
point.
this is Ryan.
Yeah, right.
This is Ryan. Just a similar thought. You know, I think I've mentioned this before, but first, just kind of do no harm. And, you know, along with that is, you know, if we move some of this stuff around, what are the unintended consequences or things that happen, adverse things that happen that we don't intend to do? And that would be great to hear that too from other states, just so we don't make the same mistakes. I would hate for us to do that.
That's a good point. I don't know whether I was reading Texas when they were passing legislation concerning student needs. So I was reading about them. Now I was reading Indiana, and it's really interesting some of the things that they were discussing and putting emphasis on. So unintended consequences, the return on investment. Dominique and I will talk about that and see what we can make sure we get you. What else is it that you feel you need or would like to have? And even when you're looking at the must-haves, should-haves, and the nice-to-haves, you know, don't say, well, there's no need to talk about this long shot. It's never going to happen. If there's any time we need to be talking about everything, now is probably that time. So all 4 of those categories can certainly look at. What else can you think of that we have not covered for this particular meeting? I like to be respectful of your time. I know how busy all of you are, and I know our next meeting will be in January, but what is it that we missed today that you feel we really need to talk about?
Cato, this is Chris again. One more thing I just wanted to mention, not necessarily related to your question, but as I had reviewed some of the other states, I believe it was when I was looking at Texas, you know, the way that we currently fund students when we're talking about a student-centered funding approach is we look at the enrollment in school districts, which typically equates to membership. And looking at Texas, I believe they use average daily attendance as the number of students, which is a much lower number, particularly in urban districts. And the current funding formula uses membership, average daily membership, and I would not want us to see. I would not want to see us move away from using enrollment as opposed to something else like average daily attendance, which really is going to penalize urban districts. And also, we have to provide resources to our students that are enrolled, really regardless of the days that they attend. And so I just want to point that out, since I did see average daily attendance being used in the Texas model. Thank you.
You know, Chris, I went through Texas too, and I thought that was interesting because the issue was not funding, that they didn't have enough funds. The fact that they were using that, I thought was interesting also. You're right. What else is that you think we missed today or that we didn't adequately cover? Well, I want to thank all of you for being so diligent and taking up your time and giving us all the feedback you have given us. If there's things you think of, contact me, Dominique, and if I don't see you or talk to you, you and your families have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and be safe out there. We're looking at our COVID numbers go up again. I mean, it's amazing. Look like I've been through this every single Christmas lately, but they are up. But here's the thing that's so interesting. The cases are not as severe as they were when we first hit this. And the individuals who are coming in are individuals who are not vaccinated. And the people who are vaccinated, symptoms are mild. So that's one of the big differences we're seeing. But please have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and thank you for your time with this committee. Dominique, is there anything we missed today?
I don't think so. Thank you all. If you need anything, just reach out.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
We got through 11 minutes early, guys. Remember that now, ladies and gentlemen.